Rolling camera.
I will introduce myself to you. My name is Kathy Davis, and I currently live in a small town called Watertown, Minnesota. And I want to talk to you about what it's like to make the decision to give your son up for adoption. The first moment was I was 16 and I wasn't feeling well, and a friend of mine said, "Do you think you're pregnant?" And I said no. We went and got a test, and sure enough I was. And at that point I was absolutely devastated. The first thing that went through my mind was, I can't tell my parents. I mean, there has to be a way that I don't have to tell my mom and dad. I did walk into an abortion clinic and sat down for an appointment, and before they got to me, I got up and walked out, because I knew that just wasn't something that I could do. I walked out and spent the money on maternity clothes, and that's when I talked to my mom and dad about adoption. And because I was adopted, it wasn't like it was a foreign conversation. I was really surprised at how supportive my parents were. 5 long months of denial. But when you start realizing that you're starting to get a little chubby around the middle, it was comforting knowing that I wasn't going to have to try and give this child, a life, because I knew I couldn't. I dropped out of high school during the actual pregnancy because I could not make myself go to school, because I was the least likely person that something like this would ever happen to. I was always the good one. Right after my son was born, I was able to spend 3 days in the hospital with him. The doctors and the nurses knew what was happening, so they kind of put me off to the side to where I could have privacy. I had him in my room every chance I could, and I was so alone, and that was very, very difficult. And one of the nurses kind of noticed, because she sat on the edge of the hospital bed and held my hand as I was crying, and she said, she said, "Can I tell you what the saddest thing is that I see here?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "It's when these young moms leave here with their babies." Because she knew at that moment how hard of a life that was going to be, not only for the young mom, but for that baby. The movie I Want to Keep My Baby, a big game changer in my, I guess I could call it my recovery from going through adoption, as they started the movie, I kept telling myself, I cannot believe this is happening. But I thought, I can do it, I can do it. I can watch this movie. Well, I don't think I made it 5 minutes in before I started just sobbing. My psychology teacher was a pretty smart guy, and didn't take much for him to put 2 and 2 together. And I remember, being just in this fetal ball position in the corner of one of the stalls, and just sobbing uncontrollably. And I think that was the first time that I actually had started to let some of that emotion out. My teacher caught up with me and said, hey, I'm guessing you've been through this. And I, obviously couldn't deny it. And we had coffee, and he said, now, how would you feel about maybe talking to our class about your experience? And I was like, no, absolutely, no, I can't do that. And he said, no, just think about it. And the biggest point he was making to me was, think about how healing this could be for you. The best thing I think I could have done was agree to do it. And he was absolutely right. Surprisingly, it was the guys in the class that had most of the questions. The only part of the talk that I drafted out that I remember is the opening sentence to grab their attention, and it was, you can keep it, you can kill it, or you can give it away. Back then, the internet was new. I didn't know anything about it. And when I had told a friend of mine that, I had given a child up for adoption, she says, oh, do you have your information out there? I'm like, out where? She says, well, like out on a registry, so if he wants to find you. I said, no, how do I do that? And so she, at work one morning, she helped me get the information about his birth out there. And never looked back. I never went to that website again. I just put it out there and went on with my life. 7 years later, I came into work one morning to an email that said, hi, my name is Jeff. You're the only person that matched the criteria of my birth. That was a day I'll never forget, ever. And it was probably almost a year after that I actually got to fly to Arizona and actually meet him face to face. It's almost a sudden feeling of that holes in your heart and your soul that you've had for all of those years that just fills, and it fills so quickly that you just are so overwhelmed with emotion. And when I embraced him and he in turn embraced me, I will never forget that moment for as long as I live, because he was filling all of that emptiness. And I didn't know what it felt like anymore to feel whole again. And I couldn't speak, I could just sob. And when he embraced me, I could feel such love from him. He didn't know me, but he had almost just a natural love for me. And he held me so tight, and he's like 6'2", very tall. And I just remember hearing him whispering in my ear, "It's okay, Mom, it's okay. I'm here now. I have to stop. But I'm here now, Mom." That was hard. But something about him
saying that to me, you know, that it was going to be okay, that he was with me now. And he never let go until I was ready. And it was truly undescribable, I think is the best way to say it. It was totally very undescribable.
Does he feel like my son? No. No. He doesn't, because he's not that baby that I walked away from. Never did I have a regret, not one moment. From the day I made the decision to the day of his birth until the day of his first birthday, I never once looked back. I truly believe with every fiber in my being that the parents that raised him were absolutely the right people that were supposed to raise him. If I were to meet somebody today that's going through what I went through, I would really want to share with them that the most important thing is to do what is ultimately best for them and the baby, whatever that decision is. I would also want to tell them about what it is like to choose adoption. I've never seen it as a negative option, and I've come to understand that it is truly an act of unconditional love. I had so much love for the baby that I knew wasn't going to be mine. But for that brief moment that I was responsible for what was going to happen to him, I made the absolute best choice for me that I could make. And when you do that, you absolutely can live with those decisions. And so whether that is maybe going down the abortion path, same concept applies. If that's truly the right decision for you, then you will be able to live with that. To understand the decision that I made, I think you would almost have to have a personal connection to that type of situation, whether it be someone else in your family, because until it happens to you, you just can't know. You can't know what you would do. You could say what you think you would do, but when it becomes a reality and you are actually faced with that, you'd be surprised at the decisions that you would make. What I do want to say to Jeff, I loved you from the moment I knew you were created. Allowing somebody else to raise you was the hardest decision my young 16-year-old mind and emotions could handle, but I always knew that I was doing the right thing for you. And as hard as it was for me to leave that hospital without you, I still left there with hope for the future that I knew that you were going to have. And I knew it was going to be better than anything I could have offered you. And it was because of that love I was able to actually release you to somebody else. And I couldn't be prouder of the man that you've grown to be. And the gift that you've given me for reaffirming and validating that I did do the right thing. And I gave you the best chance. And I love you. Can I click the clicker?
Sure.
I'll do it this way. That's a wrap. My most prized possession to this day. The photograph that I have of my 3 children together. That is something I never thought that I would ever own.